exciting to be here and like to introduce the panel. So we've got Kira, Suresh, Sri, and I'm Matt Howard here. And we're going to talk about the business case of AI. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. So really fortunate to be here. I'm Matt Howard. I'm one of the investors. I'm with Norwest Venture Partners, one of the oldest venture firms. Been around 70 years. And I've been invested in autonomy for several years. And fortunately, I had the only successful robot investment in probably 15 years, a company called Six Rivers. So I've been invested in autonomy for some time. And I guess the panel today is going to be focusing on a few things. We only have about a half an hour here. But we're going to talk about the state of the art. Where are we now with autonomy? I think we all recognize today, for most of us, especially Tim and myself, we probably, because we're the old guys here, we probably won't be here on Earth when there are cars driving around with no steering wheels, fully autonomous, unrestricted any place. Maybe we'll be surprised, but I think now we're all come down to a level of realism of what we get of autonomy. Matter of fact, you see with Microsoft now, they call everything the co-pilot. I think we all now recognize that AI and autonomy is now your work buddy. It's not the evil that everybody is talking about. I think now, so realistic, we all have now different expectations of realism of autonomy. And where are we with autonomous functions in IT? How does it relate to us? We talked about cars and robots and a few other things, but how does it relate to us? And how do we measure success? We're going to be talking about this on the panel, but what's really interesting now is the cost. There's a great Wall Street Journal article, I think we all took a look at it, of the cost. Are we going to have to absorb it, or are we going to be able to pass it on to the customer? And so we're going to be talking about that here as a panel where we are. So first we're going to talk to Sri regarding PayPal. And, I think we all know PayPal is a monster organization. It's probably constantly under attack all the time from, cyber and also just the sheer volume. So I think what we want to talk about right now is how are you handling the volume and how are you using autonomy today?
So actually it'll be a bit of a repeat of the talk that I just did. Our business case for autonomy started with a need for very high reliability. We found ourselves in a situation where we thought we had great reliability and uptime, and our customers would come in and tell us, like, you're nowhere close to what you're telling us you have. We were measuring uptime based on, like, if the servers were up, things that we call ATB, or availability to the business. And we had a bit of a wake-up call at that point in time to start to measure reliability outside in from a customer perspective. The first time we measured it, we were thinking uptime was 99.95, but we actually saw that it was from the outside in, it was less than 3 nines. From there is where we started the journey. And that journey took us through a level of automation, but then eventually into autonomy, to the point where we've not only been able to achieve 4 nines, but now we achieve about 200 days of 5 nines in a year.
Great. And then how are you handling risk, the confidence? How much are you willing to think about the co-pilot effect, and how much you're willing to go fully auto?
Yeah, look, I mean, there is a place for the co-pilot and there is a place for the autopilot. Autonomy and infrastructure is something that we are using an autopilot approach to. You use standard approaches to isolation and making sure you do a lot of testing ahead of launching it across your whole production fleet. So doing it one availability zone at a time, doing it on a small fraction of your servers at a time, building that confidence, and then using that confidence to then roll it out everywhere. That's the risk management approach. It's called a release strategy. You can call it a canary strategy, but those are the approaches that you take to scale.
Was your staff feeling threatened when it came in, or was it the evil empire, or what was the initial reaction?
Not at all. Actually, they were more than happy to give up this kind of work, which was high toil, very low satisfaction, creating very low engagement in the organization, because it had no meaning to people. What it did, though, is it allowed them to free themselves up to start to understanding the root cause of what the system was fixing and go fix that root cause to stop it from happening in the first place. So they moved to high order work, more meaningful work, and to a place where they could actually deliver to the customers better than they were before.
And Kara, I know a bit about your organization. Extremely efficient. I mean, you guys really are a very efficient organization. Was autonomy in AI, was it push or pull? Was it pushed down to you from the board, or was something you pushed up to the board? What were the dynamics when you brought autonomy into your organization?
I think it kind of was both ways. From the boards, you get sort of what are you doing about AI? But from within, I think there's a understanding that continues to grow in terms of the need for autonomy, because it's the results, especially for us, where we're running the service at 5 nines, the whole service. So the amount of overhead without the autonomy is immense. And so, and then the risk is high. And because reliability is so important to us, autonomy in terms of obviously cost, but even more so important for us, reliability, and the intelligence around autonomy to understand beyond the numbers, whether it's root cause analysis or how to actually improve performance beyond the optimization that autonomy provides in the product itself or in the services behind the product is super important. So that is really where more of the pull and push within the organization is taking place.
And how big of a topic is this at the board level? Autonomy. I mean, is it more minutes? Are they asking more about it, or are you telling them more about it?
We're telling them about it, but there's an expectation that it's inserted into every element of the process. There's now an expectation that it's going to help everything that we do, and it will be part of the building blocks and part of the product.
And you recently bought a company around AI autonomy. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what were the dynamics around that?
Sure. So we bought a company which now is a couple of years back, that provided us with the very early natural language understanding and models to be able to transcribe every single conversation that takes place on the RingCentral network, which is billions of minutes, whether it's voice minutes or video minutes. And so we put that into a product that we call and release called RingSense, which essentially we now made available to the market, that you can apply to revenue intelligence, you can apply to quality intelligence and contact center, and you can apply it to every single conversation that takes place. And initially it's really interesting that initially it was not as well understood as to what that means. Whereas now there's a huge pool in a variety of use cases, whether it's HR talking to recruiting, talking to prospects, whether it's salespeople talking to customers, whether it's agents talking to customers, whether it's internal conversations, to make that so that ultimate result is for people to do less manual work and rely on ability that has become sort of common knowledge with the release of in the public with the release of kind of OpenAI GPT, that they expect from products like ours.
Thank you. And Palo Alto Networks, one of the top security companies on earth, and very unique industry, cybersecurity. It's the cat and mouse game, always under attack. It's the gift that keeps on giving. When we talk about safety and hallucinations and accuracy, how are you about autonomy in your world?
Yeah, and that's definitely a very important topic for us because, first of all, Palo Alto, as you pointed out, been around for 15 years. It's gone through a transformation into the cloud. And part of this autonomy is not sort of uniformly distributed in everything we do, right? So there's certainly AI, in the product that we are doing in terms of finding out new vulnerabilities, creating new vulnerabilities for our internal testing and so on. And there are parts of AI that really, help improve our operations. So in terms of risk, the way we are looking at it is building co-pilots that we first roll out internally, where the margin for error is higher, right? So we don't have to have a very high bar necessarily on hallucinations, because our operators, maybe our support people, know enough to be able to figure out that this is probably not the right answer, right? And that allows us to, with the right feedback loops, allows us to let us know what parts of the system may in fact be working in a less than optimal fashion, or possibly even a dangerous manner. So what we've done is build these co-pilots, pushed it out internally to our own SRE teams, our support workforce, so that they can use it to be able to answer questions that come from customers, or able to ask the co-pilot about questions about an anomaly or an outage that might be in progress, and not completely rely on that necessarily being correct all the time, right? So so for now, it's really in an augmented mode. So I don't think we are ready yet, given what we've seen with the latest AI technologies that we have in place, for it to be autopilot yet. So it's very much in copilot.
You live in the world of false positives and false negatives. So when you think of autonomy, how do you what's more important to you, the positive or the negative? How do you view autonomy, and how do you measure that balance of being aggressive and not aggressive? And the other part of the question is, I believe you started to roll out autonomous IT functions on serverless. Are you thinking about expanding it? Maybe you could talk about that.
Oh yeah, we're definitely thinking of expanding it. So in the partnership with Sedai has been very interesting in that it is more of a dialogue. There are parts where Sedai in its current form applies to what we do, and parts where it doesn't apply yet. In fact, I was happy to see on the roadmap that they're extending themselves to GCP data flow, GCP VMs, and so on. So it'll become more relevant. So absolutely, there are parts where it applies to us. So I do expect that we'll grow from where we are using this sort of autonomy. The other thing, and I'll get more into that in my talk, is I think the peculiarities of exactly what we have in place, the fact that we've been involved in, at least in my part of the function, about 5 acquisitions, with the most recent one just earlier this week. We acquire these companies whose backends have to integrate with us. We have to present a single a console, a single pane of glass to our customers, so that all the complexity of these backends coming together gets hidden. So the act of stitching these backends together, running it as one uniform service, means that not everything we get from vendors can apply as is, right? So we've got to build a layer of intelligence and development on top of what we get from vendors. In some cases, we have to go deeper. In some cases, in partnership with Sedai, we can build on what Sedai has. So it's really a mix of that. So we need to have some pretty intense engineering happening in our own teams to be able to get to that autonomy.
I've got another question I want everybody to answer, and hopefully I can frame this right. I think every company now is complaining about the costs of cloud infrastructure. It's like the new IBM, the cost of it. And now we're being asked to roll out AI, and some people believe it's a more exotic infrastructure. It could be GPUs, not GPUs. And I'm curious from you, how much cost pressure are you under? And maybe you each talk about that, and how you're handling the costs now of this autonomous or this new AI infrastructure. Maybe everybody can answer it.
Maybe I'll start. So cost is definitely an important factor, right? But I believe that in all the applications we are looking at, right, given that we first try to apply it internally, we can very easily measure the improvements in efficiency that it's delivering, and have a path to have very clear ROI, right? We believe that, for example, in the way in which we've already applied co-pilots for use in our support teams, for instance, we can see that support teams are getting, and based on our measurements of how fast they're able to close cases and so on, that they can close it faster, which means they can handle more cases in a given quantum of time. And given the size of our portfolio, we've got lots of contract workforce that handles first level cases, and that's the easiest one to solve. So we can easily see a path to being able to shrink that, because the number that remain are able to, with the augmentation of co-pilots and the corresponding AI capabilities, more than cover the cost that we'll pay for the AI backend itself. So I believe that in all of these cases, especially internal use cases, we're able to get the ROI. As far as external use cases are concerned, I think it's a standard product market fit problem, right? If we use AI to do sort of stuff that's candy that people don't really care for. It looks interesting in a demo, but it's not really worth paying for. Then they won't pay for it, and then it's not going to pay for itself. So we'll have to build products that add real value, which means we can charge a premium for it. And it's going to be driven off of, in our case, let's say, data that we have some unique access to. So we want to build such compelling value that we'll be able to charge for it commensurate with the cost that we have in terms of running the AI.
Suresh, I probably second everything that you said. It's all, very similar in our case. Sure, there's a cost that's incurred, but that cost either translates to internal savings in labor, same case as customer support agents, being smarter, better, creating better experiences, fewer agents, automation, and it translates into every aspect of both internal company processes where AI is deployed, such as self-service agents, such as co-pilots for development, QA, etc. And then ultimately into the products that we deliver, because you're either creating better products, which is important because you want to create more value for your customers every step of the way, or you're actually creating new products, and the new products ultimately come with ability to upsell, cross-sell, new sell. And so to us, AI has opened up a whole bunch of new opportunities that frankly just weren't there. And the adoption in the market is moving much faster than I think we've ever seen, at least in my experience.
A few things that I want to share, like the narrative seems to indicate that all this is new. It's not. Companies have been leveraging AI for a long period of time in various shapes and forms, and there is there is a step function change of the last few months in terms of awareness, adoption, and so on. But it is a continuum still. It's not a fresh start. It's not a new start. It's a journey that continues with certain new advancements in the tech that's now available. In terms of an investment framework, what we've done internally is we've taken a 2x2 a bit of what both of you alluded to as well. And that 2x2 for us is internal, external on one axis, and assist and act on the other axis. Internal assist is where we have actually put most of the investment in the beginning. Part of it is risk is low, return in productivity is high. And then like the external act on behalf of the customer is probably going to be the last frontier you're going to cross on this. So we just have an internal mental model around like what we want to do in each. Third is an approach where we believe that the short-term value will actually come from exploitation of what the industry has done in terms of step function versus pure exploration in this area. And yes, you'll eventually explore and create some new bubbles. But for now, exploiting the tech that's out there is going to be the highest value. Last but not least, the value on investment is no different than any other technology introduction we have had in the past. Either it has to have a productivity multiple that pays for it, or it has to have a customer metric multiple that pays for it. And the framework that you apply in economics is going to be the same as you've done in the past. AI doesn't present any new method of evaluation for that. It is expensive. All of us are recognizing that. But this is where we're also diversifying from using vendor-only solution from the few big players, Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI, to saying, what's actually there in the open source system? Where can you partner? Where are places that you can enrich the models? And that way, you figure out the right sizing of cost in terms of what you actually need. Using 3.5, where you don't need 4.0, is huge savings. In some cases, what we've done is in a single use case, 80% is served by 3.5, 20% is served by 4.0. So there's multi-model approaches that you take in it too.
Yeah. Last question for round robin here is that we all talked about, three of you have AI product strategies, which is secondary to companies like Sedai. So you're all talked about the push and pull of incorporating AI into your product strategies. And I'm told Silicon Valley has the highest productivity in the United States. I'm told that people here work. We all know that. And now you're being asked to do more with less. So I'm curious, how stressed is your dev team, your DevOps team, your SRE team, and how has companies like Sedai, is that relieving the stress? So number one, I want you to comment, how stressed is your team? I assume you're not getting exponential resources. And how are you handling the stress in the organization? And has autonomy in IT, is it starting to show any relief? We go around.
I think in terms of the financial architecture of any company, cost is going to be an evergreen concern. That is not new. It has existed always, particularly given what's going on with the external economy right now. Cost is definitely a conversation that's happening at all levels, from the board down to every portion of the management team. That includes the cost of labor, and productivity has become a conversation that's ongoing and exists on a continuous basis. I do believe.
How are you measuring productivity today? How do you know it?
Various different ways, right? We actually have a lot of engineering analytics, all the way from pure activity metrics all the way to outcome metrics. What the C-suite and the board cares for is the outcome metrics. But down in terms of looking at relative productivity of individuals, you can actually look at output metrics as well, activity, output, outcome. And through that, we often use it mostly to intervene in terms of training and helping people who are not quite the same as where the median may be, and so on. But coming back to this, is autonomy providing relief? I think yes. And that's not just as of the last 9 months. For us, that has provided relief in many, many different ways for many years now.
Scale 1 to 10, how stressed is your DevOps SRE team today?
Not any more than they've been, and actually less than they've been about a decade ago.
So definitely less stress than they were a decade ago. Definitely more tools, and definitely without automation, I don't know how we would be able, and autonomy beyond automation, I don't know how we'd be able to do the work that we do today. I don't think it actually would be possible, period. And especially with distributed locations, because people are, we all work in distributed teams. So, and it's true for every function in the organization. Certainly, the SRE team and the DevOps team, and especially in our case, where again they're running it at super high availability, just couldn't do what they do. And as they plan going forward, because every company is now asked to be more efficient, well, that just means more autonomy. It's almost synonymous to me.
For us, we've just seen a lot of growth, which is very welcome. So I'd say our team is in fact stressed. Like I was mentioning, it's not like we are fully autonomous everywhere. There are some places where we're autonomous, and some places we've got some work to do. I think for us, the interesting angle has been our conversations with the Sedai team. So I'd say the Sedai approach has made clear that certain things are possible. Right, so that has been good for our teams to see. We've applied, like I said, we've applied Sedai in some places it doesn't quite directly apply. But the fact that there's existence proof of being able to do better, that alone allows us internally to drive some changes and make some improvements.
Do you have time for one more question? Okay, so in my shop at Norwest, we've got a $13 billion under management. We have 250 active companies, so we have all these sensors out there. And I know in my own personal portfolio that companies that have AI technologies that are customer facing, some of them are not sure how much uplift they can get in revenue, like how much they have to absorb. And there's an article in the Wall Street Journal that even Microsoft's losing money. I think the only company making money out there in AI is probably NVIDIA and a few other companies, $1 trillion+ market cap. So in your strategy, is there a foregone conclusion you can increase your ASPs, or is the jury still out? Because there's this tension of cost reduction versus how much you can pass on to the consumer or to your customer? Maybe you can talk about that tension, or is a foregone conclusion you can be able to increase the ASP? Because some of my companies say it's just part of business. They're going to give it away. They can't uplift. So I'm curious what you're seeing.
I think that we definitely will see an uplift. And this goes back to the creation of value. I think as Shri was saying, AI was not born with ChatGPT, right? We were already doing a bunch of AI and machine learning and so on in our security portfolio. But clearly ChatGPT was a level up in what AI could do. So, using that in addition with everything else we have and driving real value for our customers, we are pretty confident that we should be able to see an uplift.
I would agree. So definitely we expect an uplift. It's still early. I think it's early for everyone. Definitely we're all willing to accept loss leaders to some extent. And we're building an assumption that ASP will continue to go up as we create more value. And it's not just translating, creating a basic assistant. It goes way beyond thinking, okay, everybody's going to have some basic stuff. That basic stuff is going to be actually added cost. So we're going to have to absorb it. But then the value that you add on top is going to be where companies are going to differentiate. And I think in creating real products beyond sort of the initial surface there, I think for one way or another, we're all scratching. That is where true value will come out. And there's a lot of engineering behind it. The engineering is about figuring out how to internally smartly to implement AI, which does mean 3.5 or 4.0. Basically arbitrage between different models, figuring out where small models apply, etc. I think we're so early that no one's going to even have a complete answer because we're all experimenting. But certainly the expectation is a lot of value creation, therefore much higher ASP.
I think the answer is twofold, which is there are going to be places where the value add that comes from AI will allow you to pass it on to the customer, and they will pay for it because the value they get will beat the price that they are paying additionally. But there's going to be a bunch of different places where you will not be able to do that. And as enterprises, what we'll have to do is to ensure that the cost that we incur thoughtfully and with the right judgment is something that we're able to offset with something else within the enterprise and not passing it on to the customer. Particularly in payments, it's a race to zero in terms of cost of payments. You can't keep increasing the prices there. You lose to the competition very quickly. And there's a lot of disruption coming there from a payments perspective. So I will not go into that. But I think the answer is twofold. There'll be certain value-added services for which you can pass on the cost because the value will be great. And there are places where you cannot, and you have to offset it internally.
Well, with that, I'd like to thank three great panelists. And so let's give it up for these three fine folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.